right, well, welcome. I've got Tyler. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name.
So it is pronounced like it looks, Dickerhoof. It looks confusing, but it's not. It's a very phonetic Dickerhoof.
Dickerhoof of
Yep.
TylerDickerhoof.com.
Yes,
right.
Correct.
The impact-driven leader.
Yeah.
Feel free to check him out. But Tyler, welcome in. Good to have you here.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to have a good conversation with you and add value to your listeners and really just enjoy the opportunity to share a little bit about my journey. But man, I'd love to know as well, kind of how that fits into you, your audience, and how you're trying to serve people too, man.
Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, the first question I love just kick the ball off. And the interesting part of just really in our 20s, when we're trying to figure out who we are, why we think the way we think, think of people growing up and even in your early 20s, who really shaped your thinking, either positive, negatively, where you had to really learn to shift, or was that somebody that was embedded in you early that you kind of grown into throughout your life? So, yeah.
There's a couple individuals. I think in my, early 20s, whether I was in college, I had a advisor in college, a coach who, was a big part of my life. I competed when I was in college. I had mentors, kind of people I spent time with before that. My dad, just kind of, there's elements that were a big part of my life. There was no one singular. And I think that was a problem in and of itself. What's interesting is I'm 42. I'm old. I'm bald. But I mean, come on. What do I have to lose now? I mean, the gray hair, it doesn't matter. And one of the things that I found in Cartwright, I think you're a prime example of this. When I was in my early 20s, 20 years ago, can imagine that, 20 years ago, the idea of finding a mentor was not nearly as popular as what it is today.
Interesting.
It wasn't something my buddies and I walked around and said, "Hey, dude, do you have a mentor? Do you have someone that, you go to?" It was kind of like, "Dude, I'm going to figure this out." And, in a lot of business, it was, you had older business leaders, you had managers or whatever, but not many of them were trying to mentor you. And or you weren't really looking at them as mentors. Maybe had that relationship, maybe had some of those things. But to me, and when I talk to my peers, they're like, "Yeah, no, dude." And it's really now, and it's a part of our society. And I love that. I love that opportunity for others. I love what you're doing, because if I look back, man, had I had somebody that put their arm around me and said, "Hey, dude, it's not going to work. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt real bad." It wouldn't have been as bad. But I've also learned this. I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And I've heard this saying is, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And, so for me, I had some, like I said, individuals that, impacted me, but yet it was more of me failing forward in painful ways that I started to grow. And then it ultimately came to a day, it's like, this isn't working. I don't want to be here.
Right.
And, kind of that then evolution into personal development and seeking to make a difference, to make an impact.
So what were some of those things that you felt like made you ready? What were some of the pitfalls, the failures?
Dude, getting kicked in the guts, a couple times. There was one day. So my previous career, I mean, now I'm a podcaster, and direct sales network marketer to a leadership community, soccer coach, dad, and previously I was a nutritionist for dairy cows. So I did that for 13 years. And there was one day I was going out to visit some clients, and I go to my first client in the morning. It's about 8:00 in the morning. I go there, meet up with one of the owners, and he said, "Tyler, we're not going to work with you anymore." I'm like, "Okay." Well, I kind of, it's one of those things. Sometimes you see it coming, and you're just like, "All right, this wasn't a good fit. All right, fine." Go to my next appointment. Right after that, drive there, sit down, getting all my stuff ready to go about my job. And the owner comes out and he's like, "Hey, Tyler, yeah, we're going to have to work with someone else. And I'm like, Joe, seriously? The guy's name was Joe. And so I sit down on the tailgate of my truck and I'm like, dude, I feel like you just kicked me. Right. Yeah. And, you know, he was a couple years older than me. So he had enough of like a rapport, and he's like, and had a better relationship. And that was one of those moments of like, oh, I just lost 2 clients. I was working in essentially a commission-based job. I don't know how much of my income that represented, and not a big percentage, but it was like, oh, that sucked. I had those experiences, but it wasn't necessarily that those sunk in. It was like, oh, you lose a client, go. All right, then go find another one. And it wasn't until years later where all of a sudden I started to have a cascade of that. It was normal business, but started to have a cascade of losing a few clients. And it was in the 08, 09 time frame where in agriculture, hey, financial times hit it rough. Yeah. You know, I was dealing with people losing money, and here I am. I'm just trying to help them not lose as much.
Right.
And, you know, for me in that point, that ended up being a lot of break in my confidence of thinking, what value could I bring to them? Like what value did I personally have? How could I impact their business? How could I help them achieve their goals? And I had no idea. And I ended up just kind of cascading downward, because I'm like, dude, how can I go get a new client? I don't even know how I can help my clients I have now. That ended up being a rough time. I'm thankful for, I'm a person of faith that God led me through that. I wouldn't necessarily in that point attribute it to him, but it's definitely, that's what led me to where I'm at now, to understand I had to go through some of those hard times to sand off my rough edges, sand off my things that my insecurities, quite honestly, to where then I could start to grow and develop. I'm like, oh, this is how I can serve people.
Yeah. So what were some of the things that you, maybe what's the biggest lesson you learned at that time? What was kind of the big outlier of like, oh yeah, this is what led to me changing, and this is what I'm bringing to me now?
Yeah. It was just a couple years ago. And it was, I was going through the process. I had joined a mentorship group. Actually, it just got kicked off again. It's called Executive Circle. It's by the John Maxwell Company. It's being led now by Joel Manby, who is a former CEO of Saturn and HFE entertainment companies. So super cool experience. Had the opportunity to go to that. And as part of it, they asked you, initial stages of it, to do a 360 review with people that you worked with, peers, whatever it may be. So I'm like, great, I'm excited. I did that. And the results came back very different than what I anticipated. You know, I was in it to grow. I was excited to grow. And what I found out in that, and that was after my nutrition career had ended, had success in network marketing, involved my wife in serving people and helping people. And the key attribute that came out of that review is it's about me. And I read that. I'm like, it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't believe it's about me. I'm like, I like to be a part of a team. Now, we didn't talk about this earlier. You live in Alabama. It's either Auburn or Alabama. There's no ifs.
Here we go.
What was that?
War Eagle.
Okay.
There you go.
He is laying it out right now. We won't bring up the Gene Chizik or the Gus Malzahn era. You have moved past that, I hope. But anyways.
We did have a national championship in there.
Hey, you know what? I'm a Buckeye fan. We had one too, but I am glad Urban's not our coach today.
Oh,
okay.
Gosh.
Just saying. All right. Didn't think we'd talk about that today, but we found a way to, wiggle in some college football. But I want to be a part of a team. It's like, don't make it's not about me, but what I learned is I put on this protective armor of put my head down and push through, because that's how I got through hard things in life. And so in my nutrition business, that's what held me back there. When I was involved in our business in those early stages, and it was put my head down and push, it's like, where's the next goal? What's the next opportunity? It wasn't about, hey, man, I'd love to accomplish this, but man, Cartwright, where do you want to go? Like, what's important to you?
Right.
And once I realized that unlocked everything.
Yeah.
But I also had to understand where that came from. And that was a situation where for a few years we owned a gym, and I got done working out, and I was sitting down on the bench, and I was drinking my protein shake afterwards. And I just had this sense come over me, and it said, Tyler, that's how you deal with it. I was like, you know, for me, again, a person of faith, I knew it was God, and it was like, okay. And I knew what he was talking about. I was going through some just business strife. You know, I had some, you know, relationships with different people in our business that was just kind of like, all right, we got to work through this. And my solution was just put my head down and push through it.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's where it was like, oh, that's how I dealt with things. Well, let me take you back to the 14-year-old Tyler in June of 1994. I grew up on a farm in Ohio. I'm a Buckeye. I'm an Ohio State fan. And on that farm that afternoon, it was a Saturday afternoon, and we were moving some wagons to bale hay. That's something you do on farms, especially in the Midwest. I was 14. I was moving it. My dad and my younger brother were somewhere else. And as I was moving these wagons, I see my youngest brother. And he's in the grass area right beside the driveway, and I wave at him. And I proceed to drive around, pull forward to put the wagon where I needed to. And I look back, and my little brother's laying in the driveway. And I'd driven over him, and he died.
Wow.
He was 3. I was 14. Pretty major moment of my adolescence. And the thing that happened next along the sequence is what affected me for the next 23, 24 years.
Right.
24
Yeah.
years. And what happened is, you know, the emergency responders get called, ambulances there, sheriff's there. I grew up on a dairy farm. And so if you know anything about dairy farming, cows get milked 2 to 3 times a day. That's just every day. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And I'm standing there, and the sheriff is sitting in front of me on the hood of his car. I'm standing, 14. I'm maybe 5'7", 120 pounds, soaking wet. And he's asking me questions about what happened. Like, what happened? And I said to him, I said, sir, I'll gladly answer any question you have. It was an accident. That's what I know. However, and I turn and look to my left, and there's, you know, our point at our barn. I'm like, there's 50 cows in there that aren't going to milk themselves. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to milk them. And if you want to go with me and ask questions, come along. Oh, wow. And I vividly remember that. And I vividly remember that because that was the moment of another example of me. How am I going to get through this? I'm just going to put my head down and push.
Yeah.
And I can be pretty intense. And I'm passionate. And that's how I got through the next 24 years of life.
Yeah. So, man, that's interesting. That's a powerful story. The balance of that, what I was sitting there thinking before you even told that story is many people, when they experience rejection, when they experience trauma like you experienced, they sit and wallow in it. But you created a survival mechanism on the other side of the spectrum, just keep grinding, keep going. And I'm just curious, through, I guess, your own personal journey, your own healing, how have you found balance and finding kind of the in-between?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And that's really what I've kind of understood is a big part of my purpose, is to be able to share that and to share what I learned through that process. And a lot of it's only been in the last few years. Again, it's been as these things have been revealed to me. And as I mentioned earlier, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Now, the teacher for me was my own past experiences. Like, that doesn't work. You just push people away. I'll go stand in the corner, even though I want to be in a circle with everyone. I ended up in the corner because my intensity, pushed people away, and I didn't know it. And, the big thing for me was understanding all of it was laden in insecurity. It was insecurities of, the previous childhood stuff. It's like, what value do I have to offer? And instead of me understanding, my uniqueness, it kind of became to where I'm just going to push myself through and not necessarily understand to follow the path that God has laid for me.
Yeah.
I'm just going to push through, because if I push through, I can get there. But if I follow that path, who knows where it's going to go? And to me, a big part of that was understanding my insecurities instead of, finding value in what information I knew. My real value is encouraging others and helping others see what they can't see. It's what I love about coaching sports and youth sports, and I've done it for years, is because you can take that player and you say, hey, come here. You go play that position. You've never played it before, but you have all the skills and attributes, and they go over there and they have tremendous success. They come on to, come off the field on the sideline. They're beaming ear to ear. That to me is absolutely invigorating. Yeah. And to see that in business and see with others is so much fun. But what I had to learn, it wasn't about what I knew. It's about how I helped others.
Right.
And to me, that was unlocking my insecurities that were holding me back. And what I've learned, it was practicing empathy.
Yeah.
Now, what you said earlier ties into it so amazing. I wish we had it set up, but didn't. As you said, you could be so hard and callous. And that was in a way me. I didn't know I was. I didn't feel like I was hard and callous, but I was. Or, as you said, you could wallow in it. And to me, I call that a doormat.
Right.
And that's how they just let people walk all over them. And to me, that's the spectrum of empathy. And really healthy empathy is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And we're empathetic in a healthy way. We appreciate people. We say, hey, how can I put my arm around you? Let's walk together. It doesn't mean, hey, Cartwright, walk all over me. Yeah. Or it doesn't mean, hey, get out of my way, Cartwright, let me go.
Right.
It's how are we going to do this together? And that to me is, is the barrier of, how do you get through the barrier of your own insecurities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it sounds like you found empathy is really bringing your strength to the person and understand where they're coming from. And it sounds like you have been able to use that intensity for the good of others.
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah.
I want to.
Right. Exactly. Which sounds like a good leader. So, I mean, where do you see that showing up in your life of you really, it's allowed you to be part of a team I mean, you said you talk about coaching soccer and where else have you seen that you've just like, I guess some of the more leadership skills, because it does seem like that you've got this, a leadership calling on your life, because that's like people want to follow that people that are moving.
Yeah. I mean,
people that are standing still. Right. So
to me, it's stuff that I always wanted and like had this passion for. But again, my insecurities were the barrier. My intensity was always the barrier. And then having an opportunity to where my passions and interests really came alive. And for us, for my wife and I, that was something we prayed for, that ultimately was a health and wellness network marketing company. I had no desire, didn't want to be a part of it, but all of a sudden have this ability to impact tens of hundreds of thousands of people. And it's like, oh, okay, what's this about? But then it was like, oh, it's not about me. It's about how can I serve others? How can I use this interest and passion to connect people and paint this vision and help them accomplish? Oh, now I'm starting to see how this all unlocks and how this all, when we just put our arms around each other, we link arms, man, we can accomplish so much. But if we're trying to be the man on an island, which I was a man on an island professionally for a while, and it sucked. I didn't like it. I didn't want to be there. I just tried to fight, and every day was a swing at some invisible opponent of just trying to get through it. And the reality is I was hurt myself. It says don't box the air, right? That's what, Paul's words said, don't box the air. Instead, fight the race that's everlasting. And to me, I didn't understand that. It's like, oh, that race is running with others instead of just, throwing punches in the air just to survive. And to me, that's been this process of, through our business, through our network marketing business. But now it's been to say, how can I use those lessons I've learned that have been shared to me to help leaders in any other industry? And really, because what's pretty monumental here, got to remember, I was a nutritionist for cows. I saw more cows every day than I ever saw people. And yet, in all avenues, the way to move forward is with people. It doesn't matter if you're, like I was a nutritionist for dairy cows. It doesn't matter if you're a pastor at a church. It doesn't matter if you're a coach for a sports team. It doesn't matter if you're the manager of a car sales group. It doesn't matter if you're wherever you're at. Everything you are going to accomplish is through, with, and by virtue of other people. And so the more that you can link arms and say, hey, let's go do this. Let's get behind each other and go do this. Let's go accomplish this. Let's make this the best arena in the entire, family of arenas, because every bathroom, every turnstile, everything is so clean. People walk in and like, where are we?
Yeah.
If that's our vision and mission, it doesn't matter, but it takes people, and it takes someone to say, hey, I'm with you. Let's link arms. Let's go accomplish this.
Yeah, that's great, man. Gosh, which sometimes, we kind of miss is that takes, like you did, you had to learn to sacrifice your normal. You had to sacrifice a level of your intensity, right? What you thought, what is a strength, but sacrifice it for the good of everyone. And that's a powerful leadership, I guess, skill that most of us kind of miss. So yeah, I would love to hear more of just leaders that when you became ready, who were some of the leaders that came along your side, and what was some of the lessons that they taught you?
Oh man. I've been blessed, just absolutely blessed, and kind of unbelievable the people that have been around me, from the standpoint I've done a lot with John Maxwell. I think the other person who's had a major impact on me in his books is Jon Gordon. And for me, I was raised by a parent who was, glass is always half full. What I would term as a negative Nelly. And I didn't realize that was me in a lot of ways too. And it wasn't natural, but yet that's how I would view things sometimes. And so it'd always be, this is the negative. And I'm very strategic. I'm very analytical. So I would look at a situation like, well, here's all the things to fix. And I had to learn that doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah.
That does not get you anywhere other than people not wanting to be around you. Now, if you're like, oh my goodness, this is what's going well, this is the positive, this is, let's keep doing the great. And that's things that I've learned and seen in business, I've seen in sports. When you focus on that, the bad stuff disappears and people want to be with you. And so, Jon Gordon, John Maxwell have been tremendous there. And I've also had the, tremendous ability to just be around some peers and friends that I'm not really sure how they come into my life, but they have, the Rory Vadens to the John Rulands to, go down the list of these people that have impacted my life, guests on my podcast that I've learned so much from. And a lot of them were just chance meetings and encounters, or me asking, say, hey, would you be willing to have a conversation with me, reading books? One of the things, you talk earlier about mentors and finding that. I used to, part of my career, I did a lot of driving. I drove 55,000 miles a year. I was putting a lot of hours in my vehicle. I listened to sports radio.
Yeah.
I listened to sports radio all day long.
As a 20-year-old guy, why would you do that?
And I look back and I think, man, and if I had taken those hundreds of thousands of miles that I drove over all those years and listened to books, holy cow. Now, what do I do when I drive? I listen to books. I listen to podcasts. I listen to, those things because that's where I get filled because I want to grow in that area. And I think it's important. I found a point to where growing and getting better was going to yield results to help other people.
Right.
And so it was helping myself grow and knowing if I grew, I was going to then in turn be able to help others grow too. But others growing is what allowed me to grow. And this kind of, regenerating cycle of personal development that I didn't understand. But to me, if you want to grow as a leader, you have to be in situations where you're growing and you're around other people that are growing, trying to get better. That's when you're going to reach the levels that you can. If not, you're just going to continue to spin your wheels.
Yeah. Huh. Man, so that's interesting. Reading books now. What are you reading right now?
Well, the two books that I'm reading at this moment, Help I Work with People by Chad Veach. That's part of my book club this month. I'm also reading Beginners by Tom Vanderbilt. I just downloaded Liz Wiseman's Impact Players. So I got a lot of books right at my fingertips. Let me see. And the other one, I mentioned Joel Manby earlier. I'm going through Love Works. At any given time between hard copy books and Audible, I have 3 or 4 different books, just depending on what I'm focusing on. One thing that I have realized, and all of these books have to do with leadership, either self-leadership or leadership of others. And because I've realized that's where I need to grow the most. Right. And I'm also passionate about helping and sharing with others in that process. And it's, not so, it's pretty narrow focus. And that's where I'm at right now. In 6 months, I may have another different little topic that I want to, go deeper on. But instead of being a shotgun, is trying to really laser in and focus. So that's where I can grow the most in a short amount of time, as opposed to just picking up a little bit, a lot of different areas.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so tell me more about this book club, because I am fascinated. I saw that on your website.
Yeah.
Tell us more. What you're doing there? And it's not just coming together and talking about a book. I know there's so much more. So yeah, I mean, just for the audience, help me.
Totally. Well, so give you a little background. Like I said, I mean, I didn't grow up reading. Like my teachers in high school, if they understood now how much I read, they would be blown away. Like I didn't read. I don't even know. By the time I was 18, I don't think I read 4 books.
Right.
And Tom Sawyer was one of them. Let's be honest. Everyone read Tom Sawyer. It really came from this desires. I want to learn and grow. And so it's like, how can I share that with others? So I just started a year ago, started a podcast where I'd interview authors, would also read books. So we've curated now 10 books through the year, have a couple more to finish off the year. As a group, we'll read it, ask daily questions, kind of thought-provoking questions. But then as well, there's a group, a subset of that called a roundtable, where we sit down once a week on a Zoom. We talk about the book. We talk about the books that we've read this year, how it's affecting us in our own leadership, what questions we have, how we're able to lead better in our community or in our business. And that's the community that's really being driven. And a lot of it is interviews with podcast hosts. One of the books that I'm going to feature later this year is by Carey Nieuwhof, At Your Best. And it's, I've had John Maxwell, I've had Jon Gordon, I've had some, amazing authors that have I guess, chosen to be guests. And I can't think of any other way other than, hey, it's me helping to serve them and others. And that's what I'm in the process of doing. So
that's cool. So, I mean, that was another thing I was kind of like, I got to address is like, this guy was raised in the Midwest on a farm, working on a farm, had a job at helping farmers, nutritionist, and now podcaster, website, leadership development guy, living in Washington, So help me piece like how you got from there to there.
Yeah. So I grew up in Ohio, like you said. I spent 4 years in New York going to college, saw more snow than I'd ever seen in my life. I said, I need to get out of here. Ended up in California. That's where I met my wife. And then 12 years ago, we moved to Spokane, and her parents moved here. And just kind of this Bedouin journey in a way. And the cool thing is I've seen a lot of different places and been in different circumstances. And I've always been willing to learn, curious to learn. And to me, that's the biggest thing is really having this ability to say, hey, let's break down football and then I'll go apply it to business and soccer and cows. And it's just the way that my brain works. And it's just a gift that I have. And I understood, oh, not everyone does. And what I feel like that's allowed me is, in the context of this conversation, it's like I've had the ability. I mean, I'll be out working with my hands and have manure on it. Okay. I'm okay with that. That's cool. I'll be in a couple days. I will be in a boardroom, a ballroom, with some of the top CEOs and thought leaders in leadership in the entire world, because I've decided I'd want to be a part of that. And yet I'll be just as comfortable there because I've understood I'm curious and it's okay. And everything in between, what I've learned is that's unique, but yet I'm able to distill out lessons and experiences, which is just a unique gift that God has given me. And it's my role through podcasts, through conversation like this, to say, oh yeah, this is how I see it. And it's like, how'd you come up with that? Well, let me tell you about working with cows. And, it really is like that. And I enjoy that because it really catches people off guard. But it's not about me. It's about these experiences. It's about the hard lessons I had to learn, and the idea of saying, hey, how can I help other people learn so they don't have to maybe do it so hard? But let's learn together, because while you're learning, I'm going to pick up something too.
That's good. Yeah. It's something you said there. It's like the curiosity thing, a lot of, the guys I try to really encourage them to live that curiosity and actually follow it to the point of taking risk and failing. But because at the end of the day, I think from what you're saying in your story is like God wastes nothing.
Yeah.
He wastes nothing. He uses it all for wherever we are. And so that was a big realization of my story, getting to the place of like all those times thought I was hidden, failing, useless, that God was using that to bring me to who I am today. Yeah. So that's so
He was just setting you up. He was just setting you up. He was honing you. And I think that it takes some maturity, takes some experience, takes some appreciating our insecurities, recognizing our insecurities to say, okay, they're not because of this spirit that God wanted me to be less. Yeah. Instead, he made me in such a way to be more. It's the way that I think or allow outside influences to impress upon me that I may think I'm less. Now, C.S. Lewis's greatest, quote, in my opinion, is about humility. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Yeah. And that's contradictory for a lot of people, because they think, oh, well, if I need to serve, if I'm going to serve you, Cartwright, well, I have to think less of myself. It's like, no, not at all. I just think a lot about you. Yeah. And how can I serve you? How can I add value to you? And if we go about it that way, then our insecurities start to fall away. Yeah. Because it's not about, oh, am I looking in the camera? Am I, this or that? No, I care less. And that's a maturity journey that I had to go through. And it took a lot of black eyes and a lot of bloody noses and a lot of scraped knees and a lot of just down and out. And it was once I understood, oh, this is what I do when I'm trying to mask my insecurity. Oh, that's how I push people away. Yeah. Well, let's not do that anymore. That doesn't work. No. And it takes some time to just be willing to say, all right, God, help me.
That's good. So yeah, for the 20-year-old guy out there who believes he does have a calling of leadership on his life, what is one piece of advice that you would give him?
We all do. And the number one person to lead is yourself. Yeah. And it truly is. And when you lead yourself with consistency and with values and establish those values, eventually you're going to have people say, oh, hey, dude, why do you do what you do? Right. Tell me more about what you got going on. Then all of a sudden, you're not only leading yourself, you're leading others. Yeah. And when you then take that and realize they're asking, say, hey, why are you doing what you're doing, man? And you help enlighten them, or you help them accomplish something in your life. Now all of a sudden you've replicated that to a point where now you're making an impact. And to me, that's what I want to help people do, is to make an impact for themselves, for others. It starts with you. It starts with opening yourself up, being willing to say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I was made to be. I got to be vulnerable in it. Can I link arms with you? Because if you and I go together, man, we're going to accomplish a whole lot more. And that's a lot of fun. And it's not because of thinking, oh, dude, I don't know. Who am I? I can't do anything. You can. Yeah. Just go through the process.
Yeah. Just owning your stuff, being responsible in the little things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's a good point. Oh man. Well, yeah. So, Tyler, I guess we're coming up in the end here, but where can people find you? What's a resource that you would love to, share with my audience?
Yeah. So, a couple things: Instagram, Facebook, TylerDickerhoof.com. Look for the bald guy. You can go to, again, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, even Twitter every once in a while. I have a podcast. Would love for you to listen to that, as well. Keep listening to Cartwright. He's got so many great guests that have joined his show and people, mutual friends that we have. So appreciate what you're doing, man, and keep doing it. Keep helping men be forged to be the steel that they are. And this is something that I hold on to, and I believe is that, we're all made stronger together. Proverbs 27:17 is iron sharpens iron. And to me, that is the process of forging. Love what you're doing, dude. Keep it up.
Yeah. Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate it, man. This was a lot of fun.